The complete works of Swami Vivekananda. Karam Yoga. Chapter 1. Karma and its effect on the character. Part 2. Everything is determined by karma, work. No one can get anything unless he earns it. This is an eternal law. We may sometimes think it is not so, but in the long run we become convinced of it. A man may struggle all his life for riches. He may cheat thousands, but he finds at last that he did not deserve to become rich, and his life becomes a trouble, a nuisance to him. We may go on accumulating things for our physical enjoyment, but only that what we earn is really ours. A fool may buy all the books in the world, but they will remain in his library, and he will be able to read only those that he deserves to. And this deserving is produced by karma. Our karma determines what we deserve and what we can assimilate. We are responsible for what we are and whatever we wish ourselves to be. We have the power to make ourselves. If what we are now has been the result of our own past actions, it certainly follows that whatever we wish ourselves to be in future can be produced by our present actions. So we have to learn how to act. You will say, what is the use of learning how to work? Everyone works in some way or the other in this world, but there is a thing as frittering away our energies. With regard to Karam Yoga, the Gita says that it is doing work with cleverness, and as a science, by knowing how to work, one can obtain the greatest results. You must remember that all work is simply to bring together the power of the mind, which is already there, to wake up the soul. The power is inside every man, so is knowing. The different works are like blows to bring them out, to cause these giants to wake up. Man works with various motives. There cannot be work without motive. Some people want to get fame and they work for fame. Others want money and they work for money. Still others want to have power and they work for power. Others want to get to heaven and they work for the same. Others want to leave a name when they die, as they do in China, and no man gets a title until he is dead. And that is a better way after all than with us. What a man does something very good there, they give a title of nobility to his father who is dead or to his grandfather. Some people work for that. Some of the followers of certain Mohammedan sects work all their lives just to have a big tomb built for them when they die. I know sects among them, as soon as a child is born, a tomb is prepared for it. That is among them the most important work a man has to do, and the bigger and the finer the tomb, the better off the man is supposed to be. Others work as a penance, do all sorts of wicked things, then erect a temple or give something to the priests to buy them off and obtain from them a passport to heaven. They think that this kind of beneficence will clear them and they will go scot-free in spite of their sinfulness. Such are some of the various motives for work. But work for work's sake. There are some who really are the salt of the earth in every country and who work for work's sake, who do not care for name or fame or even to go to heaven. They will work just because good will come of it. There are others who do good to the poor and help mankind from still higher motives. because they believe in doing good and loving good. The motive for name and fame seldom brings immediate results. As a rule, they come to us when we are old and we are done with life. If a man works without any selfish motive in view, does he not gain anything? Yes, he gains the highest. Unselfishness is more paying. Only people do not have the patience to practice it. It is more paying from the point of view of health also. Love, truth, and unselfishness are not merely moral figures of speech, but they are form our highest ideal, because in them lies such a manifestation of power. In the first place, a man who can work for 5 days or even for 5 minutes without any selfish motive whatever, without thinking of future, of heaven, of punishment or anything of the kind, has in him the capacity to become a powerful moral giant. It is hard to do it, but in the heart of our hearts we know its value and the good it brings. It is the greatest manifestation of power, this tremendous restraint. Self-restraint is a manifestation of the greater power than all outgoing action. A carriage with 4 horses may rush down a hill unrestrained, or the coachman may curb the horses. Which is the greater manifestation of power, to let them go or to hold them? A cannonball flying through the air goes a long distance and falls. Another is cut short in its flight by striking against a wall, and the impact generates intense heat. All outgoing energy follows a selfish motive which is frittered away. It will not cause power to return to you, but if restrained, it will result in the development of power. This self-control will tend to produce a mighty will, a character which makes a Christ or a Buddha. Foolish men do not know this secret. They nevertheless want to rule mankind. Even a fool may rule the whole world if he works and waits. Let him wait for a few years. Restrain that foolish idea of governing, and when that idea is wholly gone, he will be a power in the world. The majority of us who cannot see beyond a few steps, just as some animals cannot see beyond a few steps, just a little narrow circle, that is our world. We have not the patience to look beyond and thus become immoral and wicked. This is our weakness, our powerlessness. Even the lowest forms of work are not to be despised. Let the man who knows no better work for his selfish ends, for name and for fame, but everyone should always try to get towards higher and higher motives and to understand them. To work we have the right, but not to the fruits thereof. Leave the fruits alone. Why care for results? If you wish to help a man, never think for what the man's attitude towards you has been. If you want to do a great or a good work, do not trouble to think what the result will be. Then there arises a difficult question in this ideal of work. Intense activity is necessary. We must always work. We cannot live a minute without work. What then becomes of rest? Here is one side of the life struggle. Work, in which we are whirled rapidly around. And there is the another, that of calm, retiring, renunciation. Everything is peaceful around. There is very little of noise and show, only nature with her animals and flowers and mountains. Neither of them is a perfect picture. A man used to solitude, if brought into contact with the surging whirlpool of the world, will be crushed by it, just as a fish that lives in the deep sea water, as soon as it is brought to the surface, breaks up into pieces, deprived of the weight of the water on it that had kept it together. Can a man who has been used to turmoil and the rush of life live at ease if he comes to a quiet place? He suffers and perchance may lose his mind. The ideal man is he who, in the midst of the greatest silence and solitude, finds the intensest activity, and in the midst of intensest activity, finds the silence and solitude of the desert. He has learned the secret of restraint. He has controlled himself. He goes through the streets of a big city with all its traffic, and his mind is as calm as if he were in a cave, were not a sound mind could reach him. And he is intensely working all the time. That is the ideal of Karam Yoga. And if you have attained to that, you have really learned the secret of work. But we have to begin from the beginning, to take up the work as they come to us and slowly make ourselves more unselfish every day. We must do the work and find out the motive power that prompts us. And almost without exception, in the first years, we shall find that our motives are always selfish. But gradually, this selfishness will melt by persistence, till at last we will come to that time when we shall be able to do really unselfish work. We may all hope that someday or another, as we struggle through the paths of life, there will come a time when we shall become perfectly unselfish. And the moment we attain to that, all our powers will become concentrated, and the knowledge which is ours will be manifest.